Hi, I'm Roxanne. I am the Associate Director in Career and Professional Development. And today we're going to talk about how to talk confidently about your work and present your portfolio. And I really conceived of this as a way to talk about presentation skills, but across a whole range of opportunities. So this is the agenda of where we're going to go today. And I am going to be emphasizing some things that are in the slides and skipping over a little bit more some other things that are in the slides to kind of address some of the things that people told me they were most interested in. But we will cover everything that's on the agenda: confidence, practicing and dealing with nerves. We'll talk about telling your story, structuring your story, talking about your work specifically, using vocal variety, and then we'll have time for Q&A. So this first slide is designed to get me a little more feedback from you all and also to get you kind of engaged with the topic. And that is, tell me how you feel about talking about your work, presenting in public, showing somebody your portfolio and knowing what to say about it. Just kind of give me an emoji or a few words reaction in the chat. And we'll pause for a minute while those come in. Nervous yet excited. I will share that I would say I am excited yet a little nervous. That's usually where I'm at, even though I do this a lot. Agreed, nervous yet excited. Anybody else want to pop in and comment? Okay. So I wanted to give you an idea of some of the context that I was thinking about where you might be talking about your work and presenting yourself. And I'll try to give you some ideas of where to start. And in some places, I'm going to speak more to one of these kinds of presentations or one of these kinds of sharing than others. But one place that you might have to share your work is in a team meeting, like in the upper left. And you can think of a weekly critique in classes this way. You might be talking about yourself in an interview or a portfolio review. You might have a reason to give a more formal public talk. And especially artists who show at galleries or have people visit their studios, you may have a chance to talk about your work with the work present, give a gallery talk or talk about your work in the studio. All right. One of the things that I think it's important to get to is confidence. And first of all, I'm thinking about that in terms of your work, and that it is actually a good thing to have confidence in your work. And I know that sometimes this can feel a little bit hard to come by. Art Center really makes this hard in some ways because it gives you so much emphasis on what you need to improve, because we're definitely working on that. So I want to remind you all that you can be confident in your work, and that this is a good thing. And that the way to be confident in that work is to focus on what you do well. And if you are having a hard time hanging on to that, what you do well, or if that's a challenge for you to identify because you're really focused on what you want to improve, I want to encourage you to find your champions. Find those people in your life They may be colleagues, they may be other students, they may be faculty members, staff, whoever it is who really believes in you and who has said and understands your work and can help you see the good things about your work. So I think one thing about going into a portfolio review or an interview particularly is being confident about your work. Now, there's also being confident in your presentation skills or your ability to talk about your work. And this is something that you probably haven't practiced as much as you have whatever your art or design field is, but it is something that you can build over time, both the skills and your confidence in the skills. It's something that you can rehearse, and it's something that rehearsal helps with. And if you really want to get good at talking about your work or talking about presenting to people, there are classes that you can take. Art Center still has a class that I think runs most terms, taught by Tony Luna in Humanities and Sciences. But there are also classes taught usually through Art Center at night, taught other places in the community. Toastmasters is a public speaking organization. So there are various ways to build your presentation confidence. And one of the biggest builders for that is to practice. Whether that's practicing giving a more formal talk like I'm doing today, or practice leading someone through your portfolio. Interview practice is a specific skill of presenting yourself and telling your story. And that's something that you need to practice well in advance of actually getting the interview. And you can practice that with our office. We do practice interviews. We also have an online resource on Art Center Connect where you can record yourself answering interview questions. Recording yourself is a great way to practice. You can do it with a friend and your cell phone. You can do it with Zoom. Just hop on Zoom into an empty Zoom room and press record and talk to the screen. Other ways that you can practice, again, with a friend, with the Writing Center, and alumni do have access to the Writing Center as well. I know it's the Writing Center, but they will practice presentations of any kind with you. And you can also schedule an advising appointment if you're a student with a peer coach. And students and alumni can schedule advising appointments with our office with career and professional development via Art Center Connect, and we can practice whether that's interviewing, practice delivering your portfolio, or practice delivering a talk. Those are all great ways to practice. I mentioned confidence, and one of the things that's going to make you sound confident is watching for those little filler words that creep in when we talk, maybe even more so in casual conversation or when we're talking in an interview. These are the ones that we have on screen. You can all, if you want to pop in the chat, you can tell me which one you know that you like to use. I'll give you a hint. My favorite is so. I have to watch for transitioning everything with so. There are also some other words like kinda, just, sorta, that also help downplay what we do. And these words, whether they're filler words or whether they're those very casual, kinda, sorta, just words, when they are too many, they detract from what we're saying and they make us sound less confident. Great talk in the chat. Thank you. How do you get rid of these? The first thing is to do, like has been suggested in the chat, you record yourself or you have someone listen to you, and you really get a sense of what you're using. You may know that you do some, but you may not know how often you're saying it. And you're like, wow, I said just every time I introduced a project. That makes me sound like I'm really unconfident in my work. So there's my the first step is to become aware of what you use, and then start to use pauses to replace those words or to take them out entirely. You can say, this is a project I worked on for, 14 weeks. Or even better, you could say, I worked on this project for 14 weeks. When I'm trying to get rid of saying so for every transition, I tell myself to pause before the next thought. Pausing, learning what you say, these are all ways to take some of this really casual language out that makes us sound less confident. And I have one other tip for nerves that I'm going to share, and that's breathing. And this sounds a little superficial, but I want to share that it can really help with the physical symptoms of nerves when you're going into an interview, when you're getting up in front of the class, when you are sharing your portfolio with someone. I have to keep reloading my favorite one over there on the side. And why do I have these gifts? I find that when I'm nervous and I want to focus on my breathing so that I can calm my racing heart, I can get rid of some of those physical effects of nerves, that's when it's really hard to focus on my breath. So having something visual to follow gives me a chance to focus on just the breath. Now, when you first start this practice, it's not going to make the nerves disappear entirely. But if you keep it up, with time, you will teach your body to calm down when you get into that deep breathing state. I also want to let you know that you can do a fantastic job no matter how nervous you are. Or, well, I guess there's a level of nerves at which it might interfere, but you can be nervous and do a great job. So don't let the idea that you are nervous get in your way. Okay, I think we've watched that circle grow and shrink enough now. I'm going to move on. What's your story? This is really at the center of when you're going to be sharing your work, when you are going to be talking about what you do as an artist or a designer, whether you are doing a portfolio review or an interview, or if you are presenting your work in a class critique or in a team meeting. What's your story? And how do you find your story? And this takes some reflection and it takes some practice. And again, all of the resources that I listed before are there to help you figure out what your story is. But this is really key, for example, in an interview where you are not just answering their questions, you're using their questions as a prompt to tell your story. A lot of the great interview advice that you can find online focuses on telling the right story for an interview. Likewise, when you're showing your portfolio, you want to make sure that you are telling the story of how you made the work so that whoever's looking at your portfolio can tell what you were thinking. And that's the same when you're making a pitch, if you're pitching a project. So the way to start Don't start by assembling your images. Don't start with your portfolio. Start with thinking about what is in front of you, all the materials, all the work that you've done, all the lessons you've learned and the skills that you've built. Gather that together first and find the through line, find the story. And then you can select the images that best tell your story for that context. Now, this is great, but what do I mean by a story? So a basic story structure has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And those parts are connected together. That's what makes it different than just a collection of images or a collection of anecdotes, is that you are drawing a through line, and that's my line with the arrow and all of these dots in my image here. You're drawing a through line to your the things that you are saying. And you're really identifying what connects them together. It is your point of view. What you say and what you don't say is going to convey your ideas and your perspective. So that's what also is present in a story. It needs specifics. You have to adapt it to fit your circumstances, your purpose, and your audience. So let's talk a minute about how story affects and engages your audience. You want to think about your audience as active partners who are going to do something with the information in your presentation. So this could be in an interview, you're talking about yourself, you want the audience to hire you. That could be what you want from a portfolio review as well, or maybe with the portfolio review, you're thinking, you know, I want them to give me really great feedback. Maybe in a class, you want to show your faculty all your sketches so they can help you pick what's working best. But then when you go to the midterm, you want to show your sketches in less detail, but you still want to show that you did them to show your thinking and your creative process. So make sure that you're thinking about who you're talking to. You're thinking about what they know and what they don't know. For example, in an interview, your interviewer has probably read your resume and they're maybe familiar with the basics of it. So you want to remind them of your experience, but you want to go beyond your experience. And we'll talk about what that beyond just the experience means in a minute. Oh, that was the one I was going to skip. Okay. So how do you have a good beginning? When you are showing your work, this is especially true for a more formal presentation or a team meeting presentation, but you want to have something at the beginning that kind of captures your audience's attention, pulls everybody together, and lets you get the presentation started. And we call this a hook. My hook in this presentation was showing you all the emojis, which usually makes people smile, and then asking you to think about how you feel when you're talking about your work or when you're presenting. Make sure that the hook feels authentic or natural to you and the topic, but here are some ways to get your audience's attention. You can ask the audience to imagine a scenario. Think about a time when you had to do something on a very short deadline, would be an example. Or you could ask the audience, what if? What if instead of having to go to 4 different apps in your phone, you could do it all in one app? Make a surprising statement. Maybe in an interview, You want to say, something that at first glance sounds a little surprising, and then you explain how it actually shows that you're really well suited to the role. Or you can say something that seems to contradict assumptions and knowledge, but then explain how it doesn't. Say something that surprises what we usually think about. You have to adapt this to the different contexts, but you always want to have a clear beginning where you are letting people know, hey, I'm confident, I'm here, I can get your attention. Then, in the middle of your interview, in the middle of your portfolio presentation, in the middle of your presenting your work to your team, you explain why. So that might be the why behind your design decisions. That might be why your artwork is the right approach for the project. Why are you the right candidate for the job? Why is a design choice effective, or does it otherwise strengthen your pitch? So let's look at kind of how we convey this why when we're presenting our work. So here I'm going to specifically talk mostly about a portfolio review or showing parts of your portfolio in an interview, maybe giving an artist talk, a networking event where you have your work with you. You want to have a main talking point, both about your work in general, that's kind of your core story, and about the specific piece of work that you're showing. You want to be able to state that main talking point in 1 to 2 sentences. It should cover the main goal or the main purpose of the work. And especially in an interview or a portfolio review, you want to include a key thing that you learned from doing the project. Many times, showing your process is going to be key. So you want to be able to give an overview of your process, and then you want to be able to expand where the reviewer or the interviewer or the person who's visiting you in your studio shows interest. But what you definitely want to make sure you do is show your sketches, show your in-progress work, especially if you are going for design work. We know from our from our recruiters, I should say, and from portfolio reviewers, that they want to see how you think. They want to see how you approach a problem. They want to see how you develop an artistic idea. So show your sketches, show your in-progress work, and really, whoops, I didn't mean to go on. Really let then the person that you're talking to, let their interest guide what else you say about a piece in your portfolio. Some things you want to avoid in presenting your work. You want to go beyond what's visible. Unless you're showing your work to someone who is not at all an artist or not at all a designer, like you're giving a public talk to a very general audience, you want to go beyond identifying what we're looking at. And you know that you are just identifying things when you hear yourself saying, this is here is a portrait. I know I have a photographer in the audience. Here's a portrait of a friend of mine. Probably not what you need to say. Give us a lead into why you took this particular photo. Again, I'm emphasizing sharing the decisions that you made and giving reasons for those decisions when you're talking about your work. Okay. Every time you present your work, every time you give a presentation, you need an ending. You need to bring things to a close. And the why behind that is that you want to make your audience feel comfortable. You don't want to have an awkward end of the conversation. Like when you're chatting with a group of friends, standing around, maybe somebody just wanders off and you're like, that was odd. We were having a conversation. Why'd they disappear? You want to leave a good final impression and help the audience remember key facts about you or about your topic. This is going to shape the audience's reception of you and give them the most positive reminder of who you were that's possible. And hopefully that will open the door to further engagement. How do you do that? You can recap, which stands for recapture. You can go back and repeat things that you said. You can pose questions. Usually in an interview, the end of the interview is your chance to ask questions of the interviewer, and you really want to take advantage of that. You can ask a portfolio reviewer for clarification about anything that they said at the end to make sure that you understand it, and that's showing that you are engaging with what they've said. And you can point to the future. You can suggest when you might meet again. You can suggest what you're going to do with the information that you got. Or if you're giving a formal presentation on a project, you can indicate what the future of the project is. If you're giving a presentation with slides, just saying thank you or just having a thank you slide is not an ending by itself. It's always great to thank people. It's always great to say, thank you for listening. If you've given a more direct presentation, but just throwing up a slide that says thank you is a little like stumbling over the ending. And you want to be really focused on how to wrap up. And as I've been talking, Shay has been popping some PDF resources that we have in the chat. And if you do need to give a presentation and you need to wrap it up, we have a worksheet to help you develop what that ending is. Okay. I have one more topic. And this goes really a little more to when you are talking to a group of people, it is something to think about for an interview, maybe less for a portfolio review, a little bit there, but definitely anytime you're giving a gallery talk or you're presenting your work in a team meeting, you're talking to a group of people, you want to vary your variety, your vocal, the way you use your voice. This is to replace a monotone where somebody just talks on and on at the same pitch and they hardly ever pause, or if they pause, it's too often. Most of us do this in everyday conversation. It's when we get in a more formal situation that we forget what we know. So think about the pitch of your voice, how high or low your voice is, because that pitch is going to help show excitement. We tend to raise our pitch when we're excited. When we're really serious about something or being very authoritative, we tend to lower our voice. And when we are transitioning A high pitch signals that the idea is still going and that we're going to keep that upward inflection, suggests more is coming. I'm not done yet. But when we're ready to transition, we want to lower our voice and let people know that the end is coming. Make sure your volume is appropriate to the situation that you are in, that you are speaking loudly enough to be heard by everybody who needs to hear you. Also, you can use volume to show excitement. And also, you can use a quieter volume to redraw people's attention to what you're saying, because they have to kind of lean in to hear you. How fast you talk. Again, fast shows excitement. Slow shows emphasis. So when you are really indicating that you're done with a thought, you want to lower your pitch, maybe lower your volume, or maybe finish with a strong volume, slow down, and pause. And you can pause longer than you think you can. You can also emphasize certain words, so you can kind of lean in to a word and say, this is really what I believe. So you're in an interview situation and you say, I'm really devoted to sustainability. And you really emphasize that word. And finally, you can repeat yourself. So it's good to maybe in an interview situation or a portfolio review situation, you say something once as you're kind of figuring out what you want to say, and then you think it through, and then you say, well, let me restate that a little more clearly, and you say it again. It's really great when you're giving a longer presentation to say things the same way a couple of times. That's vocal variety. Vocal variety is going to help you out. It's going to help you sound confident. It's going to help you guide your listener, whether you're talking to someone in an interview or whether you're presenting to a group of people. Don't prep by writing a script. Whether this is trying to script out your interview questions or you're giving a talk about your work, don't prep by writing a script. And the reason I say that is that writing is a different process than listening. Reading is a different process than listening. And most of us, when we read something we've written, we don't use the vocal variety that we would use if we were talking. So if you do need to leave yourself notes, I had notes, but what I had were keywords and key phrases that help me stay on track, but that I can't fall into the rhythms of reading. So that's what I have to say about vocal variety. I am going to give my presentation an ending, and I'm going to do a recap. Confidence is a good thing. Americans love people who show confidence. And so even if you're not feeling super confident, if you can make yourself sound confident, that's going to help you out. Rehearsal, whether that's practicing your interview skills with CPD way before you even get job offers, or practicing your presentation for your class with the Writing Center, or with CPD, or with a peer coach. Rehearsal is going to lead to comfort and smooth delivery, and it's going to help. It's really going to help knock down those nerves. Tell your story. People love stories. Humans engage with things through stories. So use a story structure. Have some kind of hook to connect with people at the beginning. Talk about your whys, not wise, but WHY apostrophe S. Bring whatever you're saying, bring a presentation, bring an interview, bring a portfolio review to a close. Don't be surprised by the ending. And use your voice to help your audience understand you. And with that, I'm going to recap, and I'm also going to elicit feedback. I'm going to ask for questions that you have. I would love, just to get us started, if you could tell me one thing. You can either unmute because I'm going to stop the recording, or you can put it in the chat. But tell me one thing that you heard today that was helpful, no matter how small that possibly was.